Hi everybody, it's Matt here, your local friendly neighbourhood vestibular migraine sufferer. Apologies that I've not done a video for a while. I've been really quite busy. I've been really busy with work and I'm in the process of moving house, which is, takes up a lot of your time, even though it's incredibly snail's pace thing to do. So, by way of a bit of a catch up, I've been feeling mostly fine. I'd say 95+%. Definitely in remission, definitely better. Still have, the odd day where it's a little bit tricky, where I might feel a bit more derealisation. I actually went into my office the other day and had to put the FL41s on for a little bit because it was dull outside and the electronic light was disturbing me. So, but that's just part and parcel now, so that's just part of my normal life really. I don't even flinch or think about it, and if you're really struggling at the moment, that's exactly where you will get to, as long as you do the things similar to myself, get the right treatments, see the right doctors, that sort of thing. So apologies for the rumble in the background, by the way. It's my battered old washer that's chunking away in the corner, so it may do the spin cycle in a minute. It's not that I'm about to, I'm not in the middle of an earthquake and about to jump under the table or something. So today's video I thought would be something that probably we can all identify with, and it's kind of what not to say to a vestibular migraine sufferer, or sort of bugbears, kind of similar topic, aren't they? So I'm kind of covering them together. So bugbears, things that really irritate you about vestibular migraine. Obviously the symptoms are of course the main irritation, but we're putting them to one side for today. So I've narrowed it down to about 5 things. I'm sure you will have things that irritate you that maybe I've not thought of or I don't know about. But here's my list, and stick your ideas in the comment section below. So I'm doing it in reverse order, so I'm going from my least irritating to my most irritating, if that makes sense. So my first choice, and coming in at number 5, I think it's number 5, is social media and vestibular migraine. Now, I don't want to diss this one too much because it can be very, very useful. So things like the Facebook forums, there's a couple on there that discuss vestibular disorder and vestibular migraine. They can be very useful. You can find out some really useful information. You can also make some good friends who are in the vestibular community, and that can be really beneficial because it can give you that support base and you can talk to people who really understand the condition. But what I don't like, it's kind of 2 things I don't like about the social media side. The first one is that what tends to happen is you only get people on that board and writing on that board when they're just starting out being poorly with the condition, or if they're slap bang in the middle of the really chronic and awful stage. What you don't tend to get is people who get better. It's a bit like the Kung Flu. Now I have to call it that, otherwise this video might get banned for actually stating its real name. But if you think about what's going on with the Kung Flu, we only ever get reports of cases or deaths. We don't actually get reports on the millions of people who've got better from Kung Flu or who've never actually had any symptoms anyway and are absolutely fine. So it's very much the same kind of principle for the Facebook groups on vestibular migraine. You're only seeing kind of one part of the story. You're seeing the most awful part of the story. And I think that can then lead to people feeling really full of despair and abandoning all hope when there really is no need to. That's one of the reasons why I carried on making videos after I felt better, and because I wanted people to be reassured that things do get better and your life will get back to normal. If you think about it, it's natural that once people get better, they don't go on those boards anymore. They probably even leave the boards because you have to move on in life, don't you? You don't. If you break your leg, years later, you're probably not going to be going on broken leg forums, for example. And the other aspect of the social media thing is, I'm not going to get into this too much because I don't want to be too controversial, but I do find that with those things, that particularly when you've got moderators, it can kind of fall into a clique, into the hands of a few people who kind of think they're monopoly on vestibular migraine or have all the knowledge or control all the knowledge about it. And I think that's not a nice thing. I won't say any more than that, but I've found out about that fairly recently. So the second one is the accusation that you are always poorly. So sufferers with this condition obviously are poorly, and they're poorly for quite some time. So eventually you start getting almost like slightly digging, slightly snidey comments that, oh, you're always poorly, you. And that's not what you want to hear. It's like, well, you basically, what you want to say back is, of course I'm always poorly, I'm chronically ill, so I'm going to be always poorly. You know, especially when you're in that chronic phase, obviously it becomes much better, and you aren't chronically poorly anymore. But when you're in that main phase, when you are always poorly, that's just stating fact. That's similar to me like saying to a cancer sufferer, oh, you're always poorly. I hate that if someone says that, oh, you're always poorly, and you just think, you know, to be frank, fuck you, you know, piss off. This takes me on to my third point is, it's kind of linked to like you're always poorly. It's then the accusations, number 3, that you don't look ill. Oh, you don't look ill. Well, no. Vestibular migraine, vestibular disorder is an invisible illness. So the clue's in the name, thicko. So you're not going to look ill. Well, sometimes you do, honestly. Sometimes I you know, some people I speak to, and when I think about myself in my halcyon days of the illness, I looked terrible. You know, I was pale, paler than I normally am. I was thin, I'd lost muscle tone, you know, all that kind of stuff. And some people, like when I speak to them now, they look really ill, but then other people, they don't look ill because that's the invisible illness. So it's not like you have, say, a broken arm that you can show somebody. You're ill until it's a bit like, you know, like conditions like MS and things like that. It's not something tangible that you can show somebody. So if people say, oh, you don't look ill, you just want to knock them out, don't you? You want to just give them a right-hander or a nut. It's just really irritating. So that was my third one. And then I come on to two now that are kind of my final 2 that I can think of, that are the most irritating for me, and I have covered them both before. So the first one I'm going to come to is my main bugbear and real irritation with vestibular disorder is the term migraine being used to describe this condition. So migraine does not do the condition justice, it's misleading, and it just makes people think, oh, well, you've just got a migraine, haven't you? You've just got like, well, you'll just be ill for like a day, you might have an headache and feel a bit sick, and then the next day you're fine. What's up with you? Get a grip, that kind of thing. That really, really, really pisses me off, because that is a bit for me like saying, so, oh, from now on we're going to call cancer the sniffles or cold. Well, of course you can't do that. It's not. They're 2 totally different conditions. One of them's incredibly minor, and the other one's incredibly serious. So why should we as vestibular disorder sufferers get categorised under a condition that, although is horrible, standard migraines, don't get me wrong, so I have family members and friends who have it, but you know, we can have vestibular migraine constantly for months and months and months. That's not a regular migraine. That's not, you know, a sort of simple, sort of straightforward illness. And I just think it's so unfair. And then that also leads people to start actually not understanding just how poorly we are, but then also kind of belittling it in a way. Like, I often get asked, one of the things that happens to me is, how's your eyes now? Or how are your migraines? Well, number one, there was never anything wrong with my eyes. It was just the symptoms of the vestibular migraine that was causing the derealization, the photophobia. And then 2, when they say, how's your migraines? Well, it doesn't work like regular migraine for me. Having a migraine for six months straight, whatever it was, probably a bit less than that. That's not like regular migraines, is it? So it's just such a bastard of a term, really. And I wish they'd change it. And I wish, you know, I just, you know, if I could change one thing about vestibular disorder other than curing it for people, it would be removing the migraine term completely and calling it probably disorder or something else. Anyway, I have covered that in another video, but it really, really pisses me off. Sorry, I'm waving my hands around a bit at the moment. I know a lot of people don't like that when I do that. Sorry. I should just sit straight, shouldn't I? Like an android, like one of Trump's sons is like that, isn't he? He's very robotic. Dominic Raab, he is in the UK. He's an MP. And then for my final one, which probably will come as no surprise, is that pretty much everybody I ever speak to gets this. So, as we know, a key symptom of vestibular migraine is anxiety or stroke depression. And remember, you can't help that because the vestibular system is closely linked to the mood system. So you don't get punched without Judy. Once you get vestibular disorder, 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, you will also get some kind of mood issue. But what the real bugbear for me and for many sufferers I know and what not to say to a vestibular person is, oh, it's just anxiety. Oh, it's all in your head. It's nerves. So I remember I used to get that. I spoke about this in another video, but I used to get that. Even my family members, and they weren't being mean or anything, but they used to say, it's just nerves, and it'll go, it's just nerves. And eventually it got to the point when people were sort of accusing me of somebody who couldn't cope with stressful situations, like, oh, he just can't handle the fact that he's a bit poorly and he's just completely overreacting. And I generally then started to really be hard on myself and think, actually, oh, I must just be a person who can't cope with things in life. And what kind of, I suppose in the States you might say pussy am I, or what kind of bell end am I, what kind of hypochondriac am I? And that really, really affected my self-esteem. And it was only when I got my second episode of vestibular migraine, which was the worst one, the longest one, that I actually started to investigate this and think, well, hang on a minute, I've had some pretty crappy things happen to me in life in between my episodes, and I coped with them just fine, and I didn't overreact. I felt I coped in a mature and adult way. So that got me thinking about this, and eventually as I researched more, as I talked to my ENT, especially my vestibular physio, who's very good, it then transpired that actually I can't help the fact that I'm getting anxious with vestibular migraine, because it's one of the symptoms and you just can't help it, because as I said, because of that interlink between the two systems. So I'm not saying that anxiety doesn't exacerbate some of the systems, it does. And that's why I always say, make sure you get control of the anxiety, then you can deal with the physical symptoms. It's really crucial you do that, but anxiety is not the cause, and anxiety is not what is wrong with us at the root cause. And that really, really annoys me. And so many people have tell me this, that they get told it's anxiety, or they have like spouses or family members who are not really interested in learning about the condition because they've made their mind up it's anxiety. It's like, well, hang on a minute, you lot are not doctors. All due respect to my family members, you're not doctors. You can't say, oh, it's definitely anxiety or it's all in your mind, actually. And it isn't. And as it's turned out, through diagnoses and learning about the condition, I now feel quite vindicated. I now feel my self-esteem kind of returned. I thought, oh, actually, once I was explained to me that I couldn't help the mood and anxiety, I was like, oh, well, it's not me then. I've not got some kind of flaw in my personality. And I felt a lot better. And to be fair, my family members, one side, I hate that term educated. You kind of get that, don't you? I don't like that at all. That for me is a bit of an elitist thing to say to people, and you're educated. But once I had told them about it and showed them videos and given them the evidence, really, they will now accept that totally. And I think probably deep down they may feel a little bit bad in terms of writing off my illness is all in my mind and me being a bit of a hypochondriac, when actually there was a big physical problem here that is a really debilitating physical problem. So they're my kind of top 5 main ones. I know there's some people have mentioned, some of my vestibular acquaintances, let's call them that, have mentioned to me before, like one girl I know, I was told that one of the most stupidest things was said to her was that her hair was too long and that's what's causing the symptoms. Seriously, thank you for your suggestions, but I've had quite enough. So there we go. So they're mine. I'm sure you've got your own. Stick them below. Let's have a discussion about it. Happy to answer questions. I always try and answer any questions or comments I have, but do bear in mind I'm not a doctor. I can only give you, I can only relay my experience to you. I can't diagnose or prescribe or cure you, unfortunately. If I could cure you, I'd probably be quite famous, wouldn't I? I'd probably be good at walking on water as well. But anyway, I shall leave you be. So remember, as you were, you'll be again. See you soon. Bye.